Gospel according to St. Matthew, the 13th chapter.
Glory to you, O Lord.
Jesus put before them another parable. The kingdom of heaven is like a mustard seed that someone took and sowed in his field. It is the smallest of all the seeds, but when it has grown, it is the greatest of shrubs and becomes a tree, so that the birds of the air come and make nests in its branches. He told them another parable. The kingdom of heaven is like yeast that a woman took and mixed in with 3 measures of flour until all of it was leavened. The kingdom of heaven is like treasure hidden in a field, which someone found and hid, and then in his joy he goes and sells all that he has and buys that field. Again, the kingdom of heaven is like a merchant in search of fine pearls. On finding one pearl of great value, he went and sold all that he had bought, and bought it. Again, the kingdom of heaven is like a net that was thrown into the sea and caught fish of every kind. When it was full, they drew it ashore, sat down and put the good into baskets, but threw out the bad. So it will be at the end of the age. The angels will come out and separate the evil from the righteous and throw them into the furnace of fire, where there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. Have you understood all of this? And they answered, yes. And he said to them, therefore, every scribe who has been trained for the kingdom of heaven is like the master of a household who brings out his treasure, what is new and what is old. The gospel of the Lord. For today's reflection on the gospel, I've invited a couple people from Workcamp. A couple weeks ago, youth and a couple adults from Prince of Peace went up to Buffalo and were seeds of God in that field. And so, I would like for them to share their stories first. And in their sharing of their stories, I hope that what you will hear is how God plants these tiny, tiny little things, and they grow into something amazing. And sometimes they grow into something that we don't even get to see the fruit of it. We just know that the seed has been left there. And so after they share their stories, then we will also have some pictures that will also express sort of a greater understanding of what we actually did there. So I'd like to invite Jackson and Chris to come forward. Go ahead, Jackson.
All right. To begin with, you have no idea who you're going to be with and what your project's going to be when you start going to Workcamp. And throughout the week, you really get a connection with the people in your crew and your resident. And Sunday evening, when I met my crew, I had no idea where they're from, who they are, like what their stories were. And we all just sort of connected. We were building a porch for some elderly residents, and you could see like the entire neighborhood was being renovated by all these work campers. And not only within your crew, but within like the entire group work camp, you definitely could see just sort of the connections that everyone made with each other. Especially within like our church group. At the end of each day, we'd meet together, and I definitely bonded with these people, and there's a lot of inside jokes now. And it doesn't seem like a lot when you first start off, but as you go through the week, you realize how important you are to these people. The porch that we had taken off was as old as the house and as old as the residents who had lived there, which means it was from like the 60s. So it was we got to put on a new one, and they were really happy about just something really small, like having a new porch. And at the end of the week, I definitely knew my residents, who I probably never would have met in any other situation. And I got to meet these new people, and I got to strengthen my faith and everything. So I'm really happy for Workcamp and all that's done for me. So yeah.
Yeah, so for those of you who might not be as familiar with the Workcamp experience, this is a trip that we've been doing for about, I think, 10, 15 years now from this church. We've had a group that goes somewhere in the country. We join up with youth groups from all over the country, and there's usually about 400 of us that are staying at a local high school, and they divide us into small work crews. Usually there's 1 or 2 adults and then about 5 or 6 youth for each site, although occasionally if it's a larger job, they'll kind of double crews up a little bit too. And then they kind of just send you out into the neighborhood. There are some times when there are neighborhoods that have had several work camps that have been there before, and Buffalo was no exception to this. This is, you know, for those of you who were around from the 60s, you all are a bit strong and resilient, I think, and a lot more so than a lot of the houses that have had to deal with the Buffalo weather, particularly the winters up there. So a lot of the sites that we had been on have actually had previous work on them before. This year was a little bit more challenging than I think than some of the other years that we've had, just in terms of some of the work that we were doing. Usually it's a fair amount of painting, and sometimes we add on, you know, like a wheelchair ramp or something like that. But a lot of times it kind of just seems a little bit more like kind of surface repair. But this was, the houses that we were working on this time were, there was a lot more structural damage that had been, that we had to deal with that. So although there were some painting sites, there were a lot more construction sites. So we got to play with power tools, which is always a fun time. I got to teach 3 high schoolers how to use a circular saw for the first time, and they enjoyed that probably a little bit more than I thought that they would. So they kind of just ran with that. But yeah, no, it was really great though. The resident that I was working for, her name was Miss Mallory, but we really only saw her a few times throughout the week. She was elderly and had been through a fair amount of surgeries recently. So because of the pain medication that she was on, she described them more as sleeping pills than pain medication. So she was out quite a bit, unfortunately, but her son was there. So and he was just really wonderful in terms of working with us. He would come out and visit with us each day, and would provide us with tools if we need anything. The last day he surprised us with pizza on the work site, so that was pretty cool too. But our Wednesday experience that we had, the Wednesdays are always a half work day, and so I think that was one of the impact days for me. We had a chance to go out to Niagara Falls, and we kind of just on a whim almost went to the Cave of the Winds, which I will still stand by as probably one of the better decisions I've made as a youth and family minister was to go there. It was just a phenomenal experience. It kind of gave a whole new definition to the term baptism. If you've been there before, it's just a big deck that kind of goes around by the American Falls, and it'll give you a glorified, plastic grocery bag to cover yourself up and try to keep everything dry, but it really doesn't do a whole lot, but it was just a phenomenal experience. And then in the evenings, then everybody kind of comes back together, and they have an evening program where you're sitting with your crews. And so, I mean, it can be a little bit of a tricky thing, because this is an interdenominational experience, and so a lot of times I think it's a really great experience because you have a chance to kind of see people from different faith backgrounds and have a chance to kind of talk to them a little bit about what their beliefs are and what their background is, and I think that can be really helpful sometimes, rather than kind of just to dismiss the other, and have it turn time to kind of just welcome them in and see who they are as people and kind of figure out a little bit about who they are and where they're coming from. But the evening programs then can be a little bit tricky because sometimes the theology and stuff like that gets a little bit mixed up. But I would say the other big impact moment for me was, like Jackson said, in the evening we would come back together with the youth group and have a chance to kind of just unpack the day a little bit and talk about that. And so although some people weren't necessarily getting a whole lot of the evening programs, or might have kind of been frustrated with some of the stuff that was going on in our youth group, I thought just had a really great experience, particularly on that Wednesday night. I think had a really great conversation and kind of talking a lot about that. So it's definitely just a really powerful experience, and you're never quite sure exactly what's going to come of it. Sometimes it just seems like it's just a little band-aid that you're putting on in the grand scheme of things. But I think overall the neighborhood where we were at was very welcoming and very excited that we were there. And I think particularly because this is one that has, had a couple of groups there before, you can definitely see that there is a much larger impact that's coming from this.
It's the old-fashioned way. 2 out of 3, rock, paper, scissors. Part of the day. All right, so looks like I gotta go first. What do I want to talk about? First, can I get a quick poll of the congregation? How many of you wake up 5 days out of the week before 6:45? Now, how many of you?
You do that.
Oh, every day. How many of you go to bed at or later than 11 o'clock at night? Okay, good. The majority of the congregation is not getting their necessary 8 hours of sleep. Now, how many of you get woken up to wakey, wakey, work campers? Okay. Maybe it's just your alarm buzzing in the morning. But every morning I would wake up and I'd hear this wakey, wakey song followed by this cheesy, what was it, a Muppet song? Yeah. This cheesy Muppet song. Fish heads? Okay. Oh, jeez. Well, I'd wake up and I'd think to myself, ugh, gotta go to work. And so I'd get up and I was kind of happy in the morning because I was actually getting to do something today. I woke up and I thought to myself, hey, I actually get to go help someone, change something. But I was still tired, so it was still bad. But I mean, you can't make everything good. And I woke up in the morning and I would walk out and I'd go to breakfast. And there were people like him who'd wake up in the morning and were like, very deranged, tired. I'd wake up, go to breakfast, sit down, have something to eat. I did this 4 or 5 times. I got into quite a rhythm. And I'd come to the thought, hey, wow, I actually get to do something. I kind of appreciate the life I lived because I saw the world around me for what they saw. The graduation rate there was what? 37%?
Less.
27%?
Yeah, it's really low.
It was shocking to me that everybody there doesn't seem to graduate from high school. And it's just incredible that you couldn't. I mean, it seems so easy. With all the friends and family that you have encouraging you to graduate, it seems, just kind of changes your perspective on everything. All right, looks like I've made my necessary 3 minutes. In order to prevent Pastor Steve from giving a sermon, you're up, bro.
Well, I'm kind of like him. Every day I would wake up and I would be so tired. I'd be like, oh, I have to go to work today. And it really didn't help that I was sleeping on an air mattress. I was deflating like matches every day. But it was a great experience because you woke up and you knew that you were doing something not just good for yourself, but good for God and good for the people around you. And it was kind of tough to see, because we were in a pretty bad area. And it was tough to see that it almost made it feel like your life was so much easier than theirs, and that you kind of had to do this instead of volunteering. That's how I felt, at least. But my resident, she was such a sweet lady because she hasn't had the best life. I think her and her son, her husband left them when he was 1 year old, and her other sons have gotten in trouble. But it was just amazing to see how much faith she still had in God, because she's lost so much, but she still has so much faith that she comes to church every Sunday, and she lets people like us work on her house. So I thought that was really cool, and it was just great to see, when we started, she was kind of hesitant, and after we finished the job, how, the look of joy on her face. I thought that was great, so...
All this pain, I wonder if I'll ever find my way. I wonder if was lost ever be found? Could a garden come up from this ground at all? You make beautiful things. You make beautiful things out of the dust. You make beautiful things. You make beautiful things out of us. All around, hope is springing up from this old ground. Out of chaos, life is being found in you. You make beautiful things. You make beautiful things out of the dust. You make beautiful things. You make beautiful things out of us. Oh, you make beautiful things. You make beautiful things out of the dust. You make beautiful things. You make beautiful things out of You make me new. You are making me new. You make me new. You are making me new. Making me new. You make beautiful things. You make beautiful things out of the dust. You make beautiful things. You make beautiful things out of us. Oh, you make beautiful things. You make beautiful things out of the
That song, over and over, you heard that refrain that you make beautiful things out of dust, and so many times over that span of a week, we saw that coming. The porches and the houses, something that so many of us would discard. This was somebody's home, and it became a beautiful thing. And not only that, I mean, our children and the grown-ups that went, they are beautiful people. And what God did with them, just in some ways, if even possible, made them to be even more beautiful. I saw such different sides of everybody that was there. And for me, as a mom and a pastor, to get to experience that like with my own kids and to work at the same time, I don't know that could possibly be any greater gift. I'm guessing that this is true for Chris and Jackson. I know it was true for our other work campers that shared. It's really, really hard to put into words what that time means for us. And there is this part in the Romans readings that we read today that says the Spirit intercedes with sighs, when they're too deep for words. That when there are no words to really explain something, that the Spirit of God expresses that. And I hope that, in our pictures and in our brief sharings and the conversations, you're able to feel and experience that a little bit, and just know that for the youth and the adults that went, it's just such a big, profound thank you to all of you who prayed for us and support us and sent us there. And also, the people of Buffalo that we helped in just tiny, tiny little ways, that they thank you, and there's so much love extending back from them towards this congregation. And you are part of the ways that God makes beautiful things in this kingdom of God. And for that, we are eternally grateful. This is the word of the Lord.
Thanks be to God.